This show is sponsored by Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today may look like an everyday mom, wife, and child of God, but she is far from ordinary. She is a highly sought-after international speaker, author, and success coach who has changed countless lives with her powerful and transformative message of shifting fear into faith. She has spoken to and motivated thousands of people on platforms across the globe. She uses her voice to ignite vision, passion, and purpose in her audience. She has been a successful entrepreneur for 20 plus years and has worked with over 20,000 people on how to own the spotlight. She has spent decades on developing her skills and been coached by some of the greatest motivational speakers on the planet, including Pete Vargas, Pat Quinn, Danny Johnson, Dr. Clarice Flute, Tamara Lowe, and Les Brown. Oh my goodness, Les Brown. That's my man. I love him. All the other ones are awesome too. Empowering women to step out of fear and into the spotlight to use their story to make a big impact for the kingdom. Please welcome Summer Day. Welcome.
You have such an amazing voice to listen to. Hearing you share my story, I was impressed with myself. Words. And I have to tell you really quick, I got to speak right before Les Brown a couple weeks ago. And when the guy was finishing, he said, we could talk to you all day, but we got to bring Les Brown to the stage. Les Brown unmuted, showed his face and said, Manny, you give this girl some of my time because she's on fire.
Wow.
Les Brown gave me his stage, and then I got to talk to him later, and I asked him if he would come and speak live at my event in September, and he said he'd be honored to. So Les Brown's going to come be at my faith event in September. So
oh my,
let you know.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I literally couldn't sleep for days. I couldn't believe Les Brown gave me his stage. And then when he spoke after me, he just sat and endorsed me as a speaker, endorsed my speaking program, told anybody if they want to learn to be a speaker. It's like, don't ask me, go learn from Summer. It was as if God himself scripted and came down and said, Les Brown, could you say this for Summer? And he did.
He's such a powerful speaker. I found him in my journey of like such power. Like it's like he said, like, I need to do it.
Yep. Yeah. He's been an inspiration to me for 18 years. So having Gibby the stage was amazing.
That's so cool. You know what? While we're on the topic of public speaking, I'm just going to stay here for a second because this is something that comes up very often with most professionals that I work with, that I deal with, and that I'm sure you encounter is public speaking, is nerves, is dealing with a lot of that. And I know that you're a public speaking coach. So why don't we just start there right now in terms of maybe you said Les Brown said, listen to this girl if you want to learn how to speak really well in public. So what are some of your pointers or ideas on that?
Well, I love the part that you brought up being nervous. So let me just tell you a few things that I believe. I actually believe that deep down inside, no matter how shy someone says they are, or how nervous, or how, oh my gosh, I'd throw up if I had to have a microphone in my hand, I actually believe that everybody secretly wants to be a speaker. Because I believe that everybody has a story. I believe everybody has a story. They have something that they've overcome. They have pain and trauma that they've went through, that if they could actually use their voice to reach back and help the next person behind them, it would transform not only the person, but their life. You know, I can't think of any pain that I've walked through that if my voice and my story and someone could learn from what I went through and it could lessen their pain, it could give them steps to help them get over that. I can't think of anybody who wouldn't really want to do that. So I actually feel like everybody has a story in them, wants to share it, but the reason they don't, Seinfeld has that joke. He says, when surveyed in America, more people are afraid of speaking than death. So he's like, when you're at a funeral, more people would rather be in the casket than do the eulogy, right? And I don't think that's actually true, but let's just say that it is. The reason that people are afraid, right? It's really just lack of two things, confidence and skill. And I really believe like it's just skill, like learning to cook. Like if you could bake a lasagna and follow a recipe, you can follow the skills for speaking. If you can play tennis, if you can play the piano, if you have something that you've been able to learn to have someone teach you, you can learn to be a speaker. It's just a matter of skills and being confident. And when you learn skills at anything, you become more confident. I'm sure you would agree that you probably are better at podcasting now than when you started, right?
Yeah.
The skills and what you've learned and how you've grown. And so that's what I always say to people if they're just starting and they know they want to be a speaker. I say it's just skills. Are you willing to get up, to learn, to fail, to get up, to learn again, to maybe not be the best speaker when you speak the first time, to stumble through your words and learn and get better, just like any other skill. Except I think it's even more valuable because this is the skill that you learn that can not only change your life, it can change the life of the listener. And let's be honest, if you're in business, public speaking and communication, I believe is the number one most important skill for anybody. When people ask, what can I do to grow my income? I was just speaking at a real estate conference and I was literally standing in front of 4 millionaire real estate investors. They were all men. And I said, I'm going to teach you the number one skill that's going to help you in your business more than anything that these guys can possibly teach you. And when they have the microphone, they might disagree. But the number one skill is being a powerful communicator. Being a powerful communicator is the number one skill in business. It's the number one skill if you're podcasting and you're not good as a communicator, your podcast isn't going to do very well. If you're a real estate investor and you're not good at communicating with people, your vision and everything, it's not going to go really well. The people that do well in life and do well in business, and Warren Buffett and Grant Cardone and all the big names, they all agree that it was public speaking and their communication that is what has got them to where they are today. And to specifically address the nervous problem, this is what I always say to people. In your body, and I'm just going to ask you, let's just say you ask me, Michael, you're like, Summer, I get too nervous. This is what I would ask you. How does it feel in your body when you're nervous?
Tight chest, right? Tight chest, right?
Anything else happen to you when you're nervous? Everybody has similarities, a little bit different, but what happens to you?
Let's say shaky voice, sweaty palms.
Does your heart pound?
Heart pounding, stomach, butterflies in the stomach.
Okay, and so then I ask people, what does it feel like in your body when you're excited? And I'm talking like you're going up the roller coaster, or maybe you're about to jump out of a plane. You're just going to do something super thrilling. How does it feel in your body physically?
Same symptoms.
And every person I've ever asked is like, oh, it's the same. Heart pound, stomach, hands shaking, voice trembling. And I said, here's the thing, is that your brain's a goal-crushing machine. Now, I don't go into all the science, but they've shown that it's true, that your brain is literally like designed to be in alignment with you. God designed your brain to be with you, not against you. And so if you're nervous, I teach my clients, just speak out loud. I am excited. I am excited. Tell your body what you are. Excited and nervous feels the same. And if you're nervous, celebrate it. The reason that you're nervous is not a bad thing. You're nervous because you care. You're nervous because it matters. You're nervous because you want to make a difference. And the last thing to know about being nervous is I've worked with some of the greats. Now, I haven't asked Les Brown this yet. I'm going to. But we mentioned Dr. Clarice Fluid. She's been speaking for 50 years. Sometimes she still gets nervous. Most of the great people out there still have levels of nerves. They've just learned how to step past that, how to move past it. I tell people you got to focus on your audience, not yourself. When you're focused on being nervous, you're focused on yourself, and that's not why you're speaking. You're speaking to change lives. You need to focus on the person. Like you just told me, focus on the one. You got to focus on the one person sitting there whose life you can transform and make them more important than your nerves.
I know that you and I have the same teacher because that's actually what I teach in my public speaking classes as well. It's so funny. I use, and I don't know if you've heard this story. I'm sure you have. Tony Robbins' story with Barbara Streisand. Have you heard that story?
No.
Oh yeah. So Barbara Streisand, and this is from Tony Robbins coaching that I took this story. So just want to give credit to him and his team in that. So Tony Robbins was working with Barbara Streisand when she was dealing with nerves, with singing, of course, right? And he was talking with her and learning about like what are you experiencing? Exactly what you asked me. And she said, my stomach hurts, palms are sweaty, all the stuff, right? And he said, well, when you're going out there, why do you think you feel this way? And she goes, because I really want to perform at my best level, right? I want to give my audience the best performance, and so I feel these nerves. So anyway, he was working with her, and as the story goes, he had gone to a concert, a Bruce Springsteen concert, and he was backstage, and he meets with Bruce, and he's talking with him, and he says, that was great. You really rocked the house. You showed up. You did a great job. Let me ask you, how did you feel when you went out there? And he literally verbatim goes through the same symptoms that Barbara Streisand had. And he said, Tony, my stomach hurts, my palms are sweaty. I'm just super excited and stoked to rock the audience, to give my audience, what they came here for. And so, Tony goes back to Barbara with this story of like, hey, listen, I just met with, another performer just like you who wants the same outcome for their audience, is experiencing the same symptoms that you're experiencing when you're going out, except he's looking at it as excitement, as like, I can't wait to get out there. I'm super stoked. I'm excited to get out there and sing. And you're looking at it going, oh my goodness, this is holding me back and I'm scared and worried. And so if we just shift that mindset of nerves into excitement, which is what you're talking about, it unlocks so much. And, I was just working with a team member on this. She's about to get in license for insurance, and she was talking about the stress and the overwhelm and everything, right? And what I was explaining to her differently than this conversation in terms of public speaking was, that stress and that overwhelm is good. It's what you were just saying about the nerves, right? It's good. It's because there's a reason why you want to pass the exam. We were talking about her goals of like what she wants to do with her license and how she wants to make a career out of this. And we're talking about her goals. And I said, that's really great. But let's shift that. Instead of pressure pushing you down, let's put that as the wind at your back, because that should be driving you forward, not holding you down, right?
That's so good. I love it. It's the wind instead of the pressure.
It's the wind.
Right. I've never heard Tony Robbins share that story. My previous background was 25 years of theater. And so that's just kind of how I started it, is I would have actors that would be really nervous to go on stage. And I would just ask them, I'm like, well, how are you feeling? Well, your body's lying to you. And I think it started with like little kids. And I was just like, oh no, you're just excited. They're like, I am. It's a little bit easier to convince kids of things than adults, but I also worked with countless adults as well. And it was just always the same thing across the board. And I also tell people, when's another time that you felt this way? Think about the things that you've accomplished in your life, the biggest things. If it's a man, what was it like when you proposed to your wife? Like, were you nervous? Think of the times when you felt this way, and was it worth it? In my life, all the really big things that I've accomplished, those big, scary goals, those moments when I've done something that others think is just crazy, what was the price on that? And what did it feel like in my body? And was it worth it? And I've never had anyone say, no. They're always like, oh my gosh, you're right. You're right. So now I teach people, when you start to feel that in your body, you should celebrate it. You should go, oh, my body already knows how important this is to me. My body already knows that this is a really big deal. And don't let fear, which is the voice of the enemy, fear, which is a liar, make the decision for you. You decide, this is high stakes. This is awesome. This is going to be incredible. Like Bruce Springsteen, instead of like Barbara going, no, I'm afraid. Because courage is just feeling the fear, right? And you step across the line anyway. You feel the fear and you pick up the microphone anyway, because you decide that the outcome is worth more to you, to the people, than the fear. and you don't choose to live your life by fear. And I could talk for 3 days about fear if you want to.
We're going to continue talking about it. But yeah, I love that too. I want to make sure that that's also heard in that it's about the outcome and the audience. And you said that earlier about it's not about us, right? It's not about the public speaker. It's not about the speaker. Yes, it's about you and your preparation and making sure that you bring value and that you present yourself professionally and all that other stuff. But as long as you're speaking for your audience, as long as you're there for them and to give to them, it's like what you said earlier about having a story to share to be able to help somebody else, is that your belief in that we're all good and we want to help others. If we're up on a stage and we got 1,000 people in front of us, if we're just there to help one person and help the 1,000 people, we're going to be able to get through it. Then the other piece about excitement and nerves that I wanted to share too, and you mentioned that you hadn't heard it from Tony, is the wonderful thing about personal development, and I know we're going to be going down this path, and that's why I want to kind of frame this up for all of us, is the wonderful thing about personal development, what I've learned is that there's nothing new about it, really, right? It's like whether you're learning from Les Brown or Tony or Grant Cardone or whoever it is that you're following today, or myself or you, right? Whatever we're teaching and helping you learn about has been going on for hundreds of years, back to the Stoics. I mean, there's so many of these teachings, they're just told in different stories and are told in different ways, and they're told through different journeys, but they all have the same foundation. And to me, that means that there's so much truth and validity to it. And that's what I love about it.
So good. I want to button hook one thing really quick before we move on is, I was talking about your brain proving you right. And everybody knows that Henry Ford quote, right? Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. If you think you can't speak, then you won't. If you think you can't be on stage, then you won't. And when I teach people in my speaking course, it's called Master Your Voice. The first thing that I start with is mastering your voice actually off stage. I teach people to master their voice off and on stage. And it starts with, we have to crush those limiting beliefs off of you. And we have to look at what you're speaking and what you're saying every day, because you're going to be right. What do you want to be right about? And in my speaking course, I take Henry Ford's quote a step further and I say, whether you speak you can or speak you can't, you're going to be right. So what do you want to be right about? Do you want to be a speaker? Then start declaring and saying, I'm going to be a speaker. I have a powerful message inside of me. Like, I was working with this beautiful mom. She lost twins. She had stillborn twins and afraid to speak. And I said, you have beautifully turned something tragic into this life, and everyone needs to know your story. I'm bawling my eyes out when she's just sharing sitting on a couch. I said, you cannot let fear stop you. You've got to start speaking the possibility, because that message, so many women need to hear that right now. Women all over this country are crying right now because they've had miscarriages or stillborns. And your voice is going to reach them in a way I can't. People get this whole you got to be a Les Brown or, a Tony Robbins, or you can't be a speaker. And that's just not the case, especially in the world we live in. You could start a podcast tomorrow and be a speaker. You could go Facebook Live or Instagram Live right now and be a speaker. You just need to make a decision and then start speaking it. That's literally the first thing I teach. Just you got to start speaking what you want to see in your life. You got to start speaking and believing what's possible for you. Because if I can't get you to be in belief, it doesn't matter what skills I give, you're going to keep self-sabotaging yourself. So it has to start with how you speak off stage and how you speak about yourself and how you see yourself. So we spend the whole first half we got to step into vision. We got to step into vision and what's possible. And we got to retrain that mouth of yours.
I love that, and I want to go into. I love. First of all, I love button hook. I've never heard button hook, but I totally I understood what you meant, and I love it. I still want to stay here actually, because there's something else that you had said earlier, and then just coming back to it when you're saying people think that they need to be these professional speakers that they see. I'm very interested in your thought process, or the way that you help speakers understand about judgment and comparing themselves to somebody's journey that has been doing it for 20, 30 years in their starting phase.
Oh, you just got me so excited with those two questions. First of all, if you're listening, I want you to write this down. Comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. And if you're a believer and you know that the joy of the Lord is your strength, comparison sucks all your strength away. You got to stop comparing yourself. There's 8 billion people on this planet almost, and Les Brown doesn't have time to serve them all. I don't. Michael certainly doesn't. There's plenty of room for you. Jump on in, and comparison keeps stealing your joy. So you got to knock that off. And 2, just lost my train of thought on the first part of your question.
Well, yeah, we're talking about comparison and judgment. And
okay, fear of judgment. Oh, this is my favorite. I think that the fear of judgment is like a practical joke that the enemy plays on us. I really do. And this is what I've discovered, and I've asked this to thousands of people. If people are walking around afraid of being judged, why? Because they've been judged before, right? They've been judged before, and they've been hurt before, and they've had people choose out of their life, especially in this cancel culture we live in now. It's like, oh, I don't like you anymore. Bye. People are blocking their families, right? Well, I started asking the nicest people I know. I started asking this lady, she's a chiropractor. If there's angels that live among us, she's one. And I asked her, have you ever had anybody judge you? Have you ever had anyone choose out of life with you? Have you ever had anyone who stopped talking to you? And she said, yeah, to all of them. And I was floored. I'm like, wait a second. You are the nicest human I know. How could somebody judge you? That makes no sense. Then I asked the next person. I have yet to find anyone on this planet who hasn't been judged. And so most of us are walking around afraid of being judged, and it's going to happen anyway. And so it's like we're waking up afraid that we'll be hungry. Like you are literally just going to be hungry, whether you like it or not. There's really not much you can do. Same with judgment. You are going to be judged no matter what you do. Everyone's in agreement. We're all judged one way or another. And so why would you waste one more moment being afraid of being judged? Because no matter what you do, you will be judged. So why don't you just be you? Be the best version of you. And some people aren't going to like it. Your family might not like it, right? Your friends might not like it. But here's the deal. The right people, they're going to love it. The right people are going to love you. Your voice isn't for everyone. But if you're at least true to who you are, you're true to your voice, and you just take it off like a blanket, man, this fear of judgment of others, make a decision today, accept, oh, I'm going to be judged no matter what I do. Ta-da! I don't have to be afraid of it. That's why I say it's a joke. It's a practical joke that's played because it's going to happen anyway. Mm-hmm. So stop being afraid of being judged. The world needs you just to step up and be you, not be anyone else, not compare yourself, just be you. You will be the medicine to someone else's heart. And I won't, Michael won't, you will. But if you're so afraid to be you because you're going to be judged, no one is ever going to get that. And they're crying out for it and they're desperate for it. So that's why it's we got to stop. I teach and preach all the time on fear of judgment is the number one that has to just go right now. It's just, it cripples people in our society, and it's going to happen no matter what. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, and when you're able to shed that fear of the judgment, then you're able to speak your truth, speak your voice, share your message. I do want to take a step back now, away from this for a second. I don't think we're going to go too far away from it because this is this is some juicy stuff. We have 2 public speaking coaches on talking to each other. This is amazing. So this is a dream come true for both of us. I do want, and then the other thing, I love that you said you have a theater background because so do I. Not as extensive as you, but I do want to go back into time with you a little bit into this journey of finding your voice because, again, so many, and similar to this team member yesterday, I have her enrolled in Toastmasters now, and we're talking about getting in front of an audience and sharing her story, her message, and how it relates to the community that she serves for insurance. And she goes, oh, I see why I need to do all this public speaking stuff, but I can't speak like you. And I'm going, well, wait a second. I've been practicing public speaking almost my whole life, but specifically practicing public speaking and my message for 6 years straight on an almost daily basis. if not every other day basis. So you can't compare your start to my middle, right?
Okay.
And so I'm very interested in your start. Where did you start? Because I think when I share what my YouTube video of my very first YouTube video out there, and people see it, they're like, oh my goodness, the amount of ums, the lack of confidence, the way I spoke is just, it's inspiring to them because they're going, oh, okay, I don't have to be perfect when I first step on the stage, right? So I'm interested in your journey and how you got started and where you were. Like, what was it like? What's the beginning of Summer Day look like?
Oh, mine is an interesting story. Not to go way back when, but I started performing on stages when I was 3. I started
Wow.
in theater. I've been in over 150 productions. I've done tours in California. I performed in Russia when I was 17, and London when I was 19. London when I was 14, New York when I was 14. And, then became a director, started directing theater. I've directed over 100 productions. It was like all I ever wanted to do in my life. I've imagined myself, 95 years old with a cane still, hobbling along and directing. And it was just my favorite thing ever. I owned my own company. I had 3 branches. It was super successful in LA. Started off just teaching kids, ended up teaching all ages. Got to do well, you'll love this because you're theater. So Les Miserables, during that 25th anniversary year, for 1 year, they released the non-amateur rights. And in Los Angeles, as far as I know, I was one of only 2 companies that got the non-professional rights for Les Mis. And I was able to do it with some equity performers and an equity stage manager and a whole bunch of equity eligible people, EMCs. And so my students were able to be in a professional version of Les Mis where it was, half of my teenagers that were students, half of these professionals, and then these like Broadway stars. I mean, the guy who played Javert for me was the original Marius. The original national tour Marius came to play Javert for me for pennies on the dollar because it was on his bucket list. And when was he never had the chance before. So it was absolutely incredible. And all I was never going to do was not going to be a speaker or a coach or any of these plans. But, God has different plans for us from sometimes. And, I just have to share that in August of 2019. And it's important that, it was August of 2019 because we all know what happened in March of 2020. So I was running my theater company. I was running it for 12 years. And in March of 2019, I got called into a meeting with my board of directors. And long story short, in 22 minutes, they took away everything I worked for my whole life.
Mm.
These were people that I loved. They're people that I trusted, that I put on my board. And when I showed up at that meeting, they asked me to retire. I was very confused. And essentially, at the end of the day, in those 22 minutes, they said that according to California law, they didn't have to give me any reason to vote me out, terminate me, and take everything. And that because of California law, no reason would be given. And you can imagine, Michael, that I sat there in absolute stunned silence for most of it, tears streaming down my face, absolute confusion. It was probably the hardest 22 minutes of my whole life. I'm even getting emotional sharing it right now. I don't even know how I drove home. It was one of those like out of body experiences. Have you ever had that where you're like looking down on your own life and you feel like this is not happening to me? I mean, I stared in their faces and was like, this isn't real. And then my brain is like, there's got to be all these things you don't know. There's got to be all this information because this just doesn't make any sense. So that threw me into a whole lot of depression. And my whole life came to a screeching halt. And I feel like I'm supposed to mention this, maybe because I mentioned the lady losing a baby, but I had a very tragic miscarriage even 2 weeks before that. So when I tell people I was in a season of losing everything, I had built a really successful network marketing business that I was invited to go open nationally, open countries that hadn't been open before, go overseas. I couldn't travel because physically my body was not recovered. And then the company got stolen all at the same time, the exact same time. And I share this with you because I need the people listening to know that if you're in a broken and you're in a hurting and you're in a lost space or you've been betrayed, I guarantee you, Michael, you have people listening that have been betrayed. I want you to know that's part of my roots. When I share where I am now, I need you to hear that just 3.5 years ago, I lost everything. And I mean, I lost my identity. Like I didn't know who Summer Day was. If I wasn't directing theater, if I wasn't at the theater rehearsals, 3 to 5 days a week with my kids were growing up there as well. All my friends were there. My whole life, everything was there and it was gone. And I didn't know who to be. I had a completely open calendar. I'd never been fired. Like in my whole life, I've never been fired. I've never lost a job. I've never anything. And, I went into really severe depression for a while, and it was beautiful. I finally just, one day I was like, this is ridiculous. What else am I going to do with my life? Everyone's like, just open another theater company. I'm like, nope, not happening. I had an attorney who's like, well, sue them and get everything back. And you know what? By the grace of God, God gave me a vision, and he said no. He said no. He showed me that the board had let me off on an island, and he gave me a vision of a sinking ship. And God just kept saying, you're welcome. And I was actually really angry at him. I'm like, stop. He's like, you're welcome. As if I need to be grateful for what happened. I'm like, I'm not going to be grateful. This is the worst thing in the world. I mean, I taught some students for those whole 12 years from like age 5, and now they're like 17, they're seniors. And it was like they were ripped out of my arms. I saw these people every week, and then they were gone. I mean, I lost an entire family, and I was not grateful, but he kept saying, you're welcome. And then during that time, I finally was like, well, what else do I want to do with my life? And that whole thing of like, people would rather die than speak in public. I took my first public speaking course as a freshman in high school, and I loved it. So I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to be a speaker. I'm going to be a speaker. Maybe I'll be a coach. I think that's a thing. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll be a trainer. And I actually asked my husband, I said, can I go back to school? He's like, what does that mean? I go, I want to take out a $25,000 loan. And for the next year, I want to go to every live event of every great speaker, and I want to study them. Not for what's coming out of their mouth, but as a speaker. I want to train myself by watching them. Can I do that? And he said, yes. And I also share this because when you make big and bold decisions and you're in the right direction, all of heaven will get behind you. Because what happened the next day was I was crying to a friend of mine about how I'm just lost and I don't know who I am. And she's like, where are you going to be in 2 weeks on these dates? I said, I have no calendar, nothing. I have nothing to do. I will be with you. Where are we going to be? And she was actually going to Shanda Sumner's event. Everybody knows her. I didn't know who she was at the time, but it was an entrepreneurial event for 1,500. And she said, I have a +1 free ticket. Do you want to go? And I said, okay. And it was 2 hours from my house. And I had a timeshare stay out in Palm Desert. So I didn't even have to pay for a ticket or staying there. And then while I was there, I just, networked and talked to people. And I ended up getting 3 more free tickets to free events. And I was like, this is crazy. And then right after that, I got somebody give me a free ticket to a Grant Cardone event. Then I was in Las Vegas because my husband was working there. And somebody said, will you still be here next week? We're going to GoPro with Eric Worre, one of my favorite speakers. I've got a free ticket. I was like, what? It got to the point where I couldn't pay to go to events. I've been doing personal development for like 20 plus years. I never got a free ticket to an event ever. Well, I started joking. I'm like, well, the Great Plateau is Tony Robbins. You mentioned it. I'd never been to a Tony Robbins event. And so I started declaring, I said, somebody's going to give me free tickets to Tony Robbins. I'm like, watch it happen. So I go to a party right around New Year's and ended up meeting people whose son worked for Tony Robbins. And I just, stop right now. Don't tell me you can get me a free ticket. And they said, absolutely, we can. He's going to be in Los Angeles in April. And so I was gifted a free Tony Robbins ticket, but it was April of when? 2020.
Oh.
And so I was only able to go to 6 events before COVID hit. But I went to event after event after event for free. And I started going, okay, pretty sure God wants me to do this. And when COVID hit, of course, I ended up having that moment of gratitude because I know myself. I know how much I loved my job. I loved my students. And I would have been in the middle of directing 3 shows. One of them would have been my 6th time directing Les Miserables. And I don't know how I would have survived. I don't know how I would have survived because I wouldn't have believed that it was only, I would have believed it was only 2 weeks. I would have been doing whatever it took to make sure that those productions happened. And because of what happened, and because God was like, look, I heard the conversations when you weren't around. Just let this all go. Let it all go. Because of all of that, when COVID hit, I launched my coaching program. When COVID hit, I launched as a speaker and made six figures my first 6 months instead of being in a business that was going to die no matter what I did. And that, I feel like you have to hear that because God sees and hears the things that you don't. God knew COVID was going to happen. That's why he showed me, like, this is a sinking ship. Like, you're on an island. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. And so I still didn't know what I was doing when I launched as a coach. I just, one of those free events I went, she was teaching, like, you can be a coach. I'm like, okay, is that what you do? I think I will be a coach. And you mentioned Danny Johnson in my bio. I went to her events for 10 years. The first time I went to her event, I said to my husband, you know, in another life, I would train like she does. I would speak for 3 days. Like, I would do that in another life because all I'm going to do is theater. I'm never going to do this. And that's what's happened now in my life, which is just unreal. And I thought my purpose was theater. I thought my purpose was all those things, and it was for a season. And now I'm walking in something that's just more glorious than I could have ever imagined. You know, and in 3 short years, you know, last year they did the Great American Speak Off. I don't know if you heard about that. Grant Cardone, Pete Vargas, all of that. They had over 27,000 people apply. Now, mind you, I did theater forever, but in the speaking world, I'm very relatively new. And 27,000 people applied, 150 golden tickets, and I got one. I got into the semifinals. I got to compete in Miami. We were put through 5 different rounds and then cut down to 30, and I made it into the 30. And then you got to do your 1 minute, 60-second speech in front of Grant Cardone, his wife, Stormy Wellington, and Pete Vargas. And it's just like American Idol. Like, you walk through the little black curtains and you step on this little stage, and then they give you feedback in the moment. And then they're like saying, yes, yes, Pete Vargas gave me a standing ovation. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, what does that mean, though? And I got in the top 12. I was one of 3 women left, and I got to be on the big stage and do the last round, the top 12. And then the voting happened, and 3 men got voted in. And then Grant Cardone said, we don't feel good about that. We have to take a woman. And so I was one of 3 left. And the 4 that they picked got to go speak at GrowthCon. Really big deal. And they ended up picking a different woman. But later on, like, the producers and stuff told me that it was between her and I. And so, like, literally I missed going by 1, missed the finals by 1, a 5th place. And I was speaking against people that had been speaking for 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, just blown away at every turn of what was happening. And I say that as well is because when you get in line with your calling, when you go all in, God will show up and encourage you. Because that whole year I spent not sure if I should train speakers, not sure if I should raise up Kingdom Voices. I had just started my Master Your Voice program, and I just kept getting beat down by the enemy at every turn, and I just wasn't sure, is this what I should do? And I just kept praying, Lord, if you want me to train speakers, you need to make it really obvious for me that this is what I'm supposed to do. Because I started off as a relationship coach in my Fear into Faith program. I've coached hundreds of women, and almost 90% of them, when they get healed and they're walking in strong faith and they're unstoppable now, they want to be speakers. And so that's how it happened. It was from client after client. So I beta tested. I'm like, let me see if God can redeem 25 years of putting people on stages, 20,000 plus people I've put on stages. Never once had I have someone who didn't go on stage. Even the 5-year-old that I held the curtain for 15 minutes. I'm like, you're not taking me out of my 100% record of 25-year career. And so I went to see, could I do it? Could I make it happen? And the 3 women, I trained them via Zoom for 6 months. And then they got to speak live on my stage in front of a couple hundred women. And they were brilliant. They were brilliant. I had someone tell me, this person was better than the keynote that you paid to be here. And she was an introvert. She had not been on stage before. And in that moment, I was like, okay, the skills are redeemed. I taught people to be a character in Les Mis or whatever, but I can teach them same skills, but just teach them to be themselves. And you'll probably agree, most speakers out there could use just a little bit more theater training. They could use a little bit more of the charisma and the presentation styles. And so that's what I've focused on, is sort of bridging those 2 worlds. And all year long. I'm like, should I do this? Should I do this? And I felt like God just took me all the way to, top number 5, because he was like, yes, you're good. You are good at this and you're a great teacher. So go just merge the two together. And that's why this year we've launched Kingdom Speakers. Because I'm really passionate, not just about raising up speakers, but my heart's all Jesus all the time. I really want to raise up powerful kingdom voices for the kingdom that will go out in the marketplace and speak boldly, but will also go preach boldly. There's not a lot of bold females, especially out in the speaking world. You probably know this because Tony, Les. If you ask Google, like, who's the greatest speaker on the planet, you get the list of the top 100. 95 of them are men. If you ask anyone, can you name 5 female speakers? I don't know if you can, Michael. Can you name 5 female speakers?
I mean, I'd be pulling for strings. I mean, Maya Angelou comes up right away for me.
It, like, pretty much no one can do it. And so my real purpose is women. I'm like, women, we've got to be represented in this industry. And I don't know why it's been so just kind of, I call it the male-dominated sport, And even in the Great American Speak Off, 12 left, 9 men, right? Very unbalanced. And then the 3 voted in, all men. So I'm thinking there's some sort of thing where men have the court advantage, just like maybe in a basketball game, they've got the height advantage. They've got a court advantage in the speaking world. So I'm passionate about that as well. It's just helping women to like find their voice and, let's get some women on that top 100 list. So that was a very long version of my story of like, how did it come there to here?
I absolutely love it. And I think just hanging on that last piece about women and men is, that's breaking down a lot of things that have been happening in society for years and going all the way down to the classroom of, the boys in the class and the girls in the class and how they're interacting with the teacher and how the teacher's interacting with them. I don't have enough research or knowledge on the topic other than knowing it from conversations like this to where, it's easier for a boy to be able to speak up in a classroom. And me being one of those outspoken boys, I can attest to that. I have a daughter who's very shy and very quiet, and she certainly would be, and my wife is they're very similar, would be the ones that, are going to get overlooked. And you know what? I can speak to this. This is a perfect example to what we're speaking about here to some extent. I have 2 daughters, Denise and Tenley. Denise is just like my wife, introverted, quiet, very smart, but introverted and quiet. And the smart part is very important in this conversation, not because they're my daughters, but just because of the interaction with the teacher. And then we have Tenley, who is 2 years younger, and she's just like me. She's extroverted, super voices her thoughts and wants to be in theater, wants to be a singer, is all about like being out there and in front, right? And also very smart. Both had the same exact kindergarten teacher. Both went through the same essentially curriculum in kindergarten, except Denise went through kindergarten during COVID, so it was a little bit more virtual. It was a hybrid of virtual, right? In a report card for Denise, they rated it on a scale from 1 to 4. On Denise's report cards, we would see 3s and 4s, but we would see mostly a scattering of 3s in the first couple of semesters leading into 4s. And they're very studious. My wife's a teacher, so she's on top of them. So this is why they're scoring so high, as well as great genetics. Ha ha ha. Okay. We go to Tenley now, who's in kindergarten presently, and we have her meetings, and she's scoring 4s from the onset. And when I had spoke with my wife about it, when this was with Denise, I said, why isn't she getting 4s in these first couple semesters? She knows all this stuff. And my wife was saying, it's just part of like the grading process and they got to develop and all this other stuff and watching their development. So when I asked the teacher, I said, I noticed that when Denise was at this level, she was getting 3s and I see that Tenley has 4s. I said, I don't see Tenley being any more advanced than Denise was at this age right now. What do you see as the reason why Tenley's scoring 4s? And the teacher looked at me and was like, you bring up a really great point, because Denise did know the material the same as Tenley. And what she would say about Tenley is Tenley could teach the class. And she then kind of like took a step back and said, come to think of it, Denise could teach the class too. except Tenley always puts her hand up and always speaks out and always shows that she knows the answer. Whereas Denise, I'd have to pull it out of her. And I think that that's a personality thing between my two daughters. But from what I've observed in my life is that typically in the classroom settings that I've been in, the boys speak up a lot more. And we do raise our hand, and we are more apt to just share our answer, whether we're right or wrong, going back to judgment, whether we're right or wrong, versus the girls in my classes where they would be more timid, they would be more shy, they would wait for the teacher to call on them. And sometimes they would get overlooked. And if we carry that on into our speaking lives, well, who's the person that's going to speak up for the organization or for the team or for the group that we're in? Well, the guy's not afraid to get judged or speak up, and he'll just say, "Hey, I'll do it." Whereas the girl who might be in that group, who might know more or have more knowledge or be better spoken or whatever, she's going to be a little bit more timid because this is kind of like how we came up together. This is just based off of my experience, not any research, but
it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Like the whole time I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. And I'm thinking when I would teach theater with groups of large children, I'm like, I feel like a lot of times you're right about the boys volunteering and all of that stuff. So something you don't know about me is I'm one of 7 children. I have 6 brothers. So I know that I'm not your average female. I always make this joke. One of these days I get to say this to Les Brown. Is that Les Brown, talks about you got to be hungry in life. Be hungry, right? And I tell people I had to be hungry in my life because if I wasn't hungry, I would go hungry. Like if I wasn't grabbing food at the table or or anything, like I wouldn't eat. And that's how my whole life was. I I was always very competitive, growing up, fighting for everything in a family with 7 kids and 6 of them being boys. So that's what I thought of when you were saying that. I'm like, I wonder if I just naturally spoke up and everything a lot more just because of being in that environment. So I'm glad that you should.
Yeah. And we have these like social cues of like, if a boy is acting wild and crazy, which they do, right? It's like, well, he's a boy, right? If a girl is acting wild and crazy, it's like, hey, you got to tone it down a little bit, relax, calm down. And I do this with my own kids, right? Like Tenley starts acting up and I'm like, Tenley, calm down, relax. Meanwhile, her best friend, who's a boy, comes over and he's all crazy and the mother feels bad. And I'm like, it's all right. It's him. It's all good. And, I'm doing this, right? And I am aware, right? So this is years of the social etiquette that gets passed down. And I think that is what leads to our female speakers, especially the ones that are in our age group who have gone through this, for years. And it's only starting to change somewhat now. But I mean, I speak with so many female entrepreneurs like yourself that typically are the only female at the table.
Okay. I know you like this term. I want to button hook 2 things. 1, I want to make sure if you're a man and you're listening, the world needs your voices too. Just because I'm so passionate about raising up women, there are men that also you got to kick fear in the pants as well, and the world deserves to hear your voice. So I want to make sure that you hear that. And 2, I want to share about the first event that I did because you wanted to hear my speaker journey, and I just wanted to share that at my first 2-day event, I was terrified. I got sick. Like I was on the toilet and the hair and makeup people were like waiting for me. And I was so nervous. I was so nervous because, well, most speakers, their first event is not 300 people. Les Brown's was not, like all the greats. Tony Robbins was not. And I'm going to share how and why it was so large. It's the most amazing story of God redeeming my life. I just want to share, like, I was so nervous and I was praying and like, I know all the techniques of like, no, I'm excited and calming my own body down. And my body was like, nope, you're not. And it was because the stakes were so high. Mm-hmm. And I finally realized, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go and be me for like 2 days. And I don't give a crud if all these women just leave. I don't give a crud if they judge me. Like, I just need to be me. And I told my husband, I had a vision speaking in front of 30,000 people. That's a story for another time. And every time I would see it, I'd see myself going out and laying down on the stage and telling everybody, I'm having a moment. You need to just wait 1 second. I'm having a moment. You're freaking out.
I've had that vision.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
where you just want to lay down. You just want to lay down on the stage.
I laid down and
Yes.
I told everybody, you have no idea what it took for me to get here. I'm having a moment. Y'all need to be quiet.
Yes.
They all laughed. No, I'm serious. I need you to be quiet. I'm breathing this in. And if you want to know a funny story, I did that in the final round for the Speak Off.
That's so cool.
And Grant Cardone hated it. And if you watch the promo, they're promoting season 2. They show me laying down, and Grant Cardone says, I don't know if she was crazy, effing crazy or courageous. I'm a little of both.
I've experienced that.
They didn't vote me in.
I've experienced that too.
That I was terrified, and then something took over. I gave myself permission, like just go be you. And I did. I laid down on stage. I started my first event laying down on stage. My husband was like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's dumb. Don't do it. They loved it. They ate it up. Second day, I did it again for a different reason, just to make them laugh. But I did. I was like, I'm just going to be me. And if they run out screaming, whatever. Like, I don't care. And what happened was I was able, what you said, boys can be more crazy. They can speak up and nobody judges. I mean, I laid down on the stage. I just did crazy things and they loved it. And that's what I want to say to your listeners is when you step into being you, even the introverts love me and I'm crazy and I'm loud and I'm obnoxious and they love it because when you are all in on being you, even if you're just an introvert, if you're all in on being you, you give the people in the audience permission to be them too. Even if they're not going to lay on a stage and they think you're crazy, there's something about, wow, that's a person that I'm watching, not afraid to be judged. And as you said, judgment earlier, everybody wants to be so courageous that they're not afraid to be judged. So that's a little bit more because you asked your speaking journey and what was it like? And I'm like, well, no, actually I was terrified.
And first of all, I mean, terrified. You had 300 people in the audience on a 2-day event, which is your first event. I mean, that's just like amazing.
I didn't know that was a big deal. I now know. At the time, I had no idea that all these mentors, Danny Johnson, Les Brown, all of them that I know of, never had that many people. Tony Robbins, I know for sure, did not.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I know. Share how that happened?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So let me backtrack. COVID hits. I'm launching my coaching program. The other thing that happened when COVID hit is I finished reading the Bible cover to cover. It had taken me 2 years.
Wow.
And when I finished, God was like, great job. And do it again. But do it for a year because that was your goal. And you laughed. It's exactly how I laughed at God. I was like, no, that's a lot. And you want me to do it twice as fast? So thank you, no. And I literally told God no. And I dragged my feet for a couple of months. And then I finally negotiated with God. I don't know if you've ever done that where you're like, okay, can we make a deal? It was like, I'll do a Facebook Live. I'll find 5 friends to do it with me and hold me accountable so I'll be successful. And so I did a Facebook Live. I asked for 5 friends and I had 20 women say yes before I was done talking. And then they started tagging all their friends and sharing it. And I had 200 women that day. And then we had 1,000 and 2,000. And then 2.5 weeks later, we had 6,700 women in a Facebook group to read the Bible cover to cover in a year. And I was freaking out because I'm like, what just happened? I am not a pastor, not a minister, not a preacher, not a pastor's wife. I have never been in a Bible study, Michael. I don't even know how you do them. And I was raised Mormon. And if the Christians find that out, they're going to show up at my house and lynch me. So no, I cannot do this. Like, I called my best friend crying and I said, God made a mistake. You were raised in the church your whole life. You've been in 40 Bible studies. You need to do this. And by the grace of God, she said, no, I'm not going to do it. But God, doesn't make mistakes. And he was so good to me. He was so gentle in that freak out moment. He said, look, I know who you are and I know who you're not. And who you are is a gatherer of people. And who you are is an incredible encourager. And that's all I want from you. I don't want you to interpret scripture. That's not why I sent them. I just want you to encourage them and get as many as you can across the finish line. Because how many of them, Summer, are really going to finish? Just get them to finish. Get them in community. Rally them around a cause and get them to finish. And so during that time, I'm like, what do we do? Let's have Zoom calls. Okay, maybe I'll get people's email address. Maybe I'll get phone numbers. We'll send them text messages of what to read. But God gave me a vision. At the end of the year, to inspire them to finish, do an event, do a 2-day event where at the end of the 2-day event, you can read the last couple paragraphs of Revelation out loud. And so I saw this event. I knew I would speak at it and there would be other female speakers. And then that's it. I just pushed forward. I told everybody we were doing it. We knew when the dates would be because it would be when we were finishing, right? It would be the exact year later. I didn't know who was going to speak. God said San Antonio. I knew it would be there, but I didn't have a hotel. I didn't have anything. And I just started telling people. I started selling tickets before I had all the speakers booked or anything. I literally was finishing the agenda at 10:30 the night before. Luckily, most of the speakers were my friends. They were like, so when am I speaking? One of my friends was like, just do Russian roulette. Like, just call our name and we'll just jump up. Like, we don't even care. Like, we're here for 2 days, just, and I'm changing the agenda as it's happening. And so that's how I had so many women. And we even Zoomed people in because there were women from other countries that in 2021, they still couldn't get on a plane and get here. So yeah, that was the pressure. And what I'd love for you to hear on this one is what I teach women is like, leave the how to God. Just say a big, fat, quick yes to the Lord and like watch him show up and blow your mind. I just left the how to God. I just told everyone this is what we're doing. And there's a rabbi in Israel who saw everything happening. He's known me for years. And he said, did you know that in Israel, they read 1 page a day of the Talmud? And it takes 7 years. And then they do events at the end of the year and they read the end out loud. And they've been doing it for almost 100 years and they fill stadiums of people. He said, Summer, I think God's using you to use the same thing with the Bible. I don't think it's ever been done.
Wow.
So that's what happened with year one. The other thing that happened with year one is I didn't know how to lead this. And so this lady was like, we'll get this book. It gives you weekly journal questions. It tells you what to read. And I was like, awesome. I told thousands of women to buy this book. And on week 5, it jumped to Matthew. And all the women are like, oh, okay, switch to Matthew. And I was like, no, God said cover to cover. Like he was so clear to me. We have to get a different book. And believe it or not, Michael, because no one believes this when I tell them, there was no Bible study in all of Amazon that went cover to cover. Every single one of them jumped around, went chronological, went a little Old Testament, a little New Testament. No one could find one. And I couldn't believe that it didn't exist. So I told them, throw that book out. We'll write our own reading plan. We'll write our own questions. And halfway through the year, a friend of mine was like, I think you're supposed to make this into a book. I think you're supposed to make this into a journal. And so we did. And my coaching program was called Fear into Faith. And I had a free Fear into Faith group. And so when 20 women wanted to read the Bible, I had like a couple hundred women in this group. So I said, well, just join this group. I bet some of them want to do it too. So our movement's called Fear into Faith because that's the group I used. And then everyone shared the link. And then there were 6,700 women in the group. And I'm like, well, I guess we'll use it for this instead. And so for the Bible journal, it was like, what are we going to call it? We'll call it Fear into Faith, 52-week Bible study journal for women. And God gave me a vision of what inspires people in the Bible. It's the stories. Why do we love good speakers? Because they're good at telling stories. We included 52 stories of women that have shifted out of fear and are walking in strong faith. So every week, the woman has a story to inspire her to keep going. And I'm sure you could guess what happened next. All of them were like, my husband wants to do this. Where's the book for men? So I enrolled my pastor to help me to tweak some of the questions and make it really specific for men. So we did. And so when we launched year 2, I didn't know there was going to be a year 2. So we finished the event, but at the event, I had the Bible journals ready for sale. And I encouraged all the women, go make disciples, go find at least one friend or maybe 10 and get them to do the second year with you. Will you give one more year of your life to God? And so the second year we got to actually have the journal. And so many of them have been they jumped on board. And so here we are, we were ending year 2 and it's like, I can't have them do the same journal. We need to do another one. So God gave me a year of miracles. And last year we came out with stories of people who had miraculous healings. And we came out with a brand new journal. And I told the ladies, I commit to 10 years to doing this. God's laughing at me. It'll probably be my whole life. But every year I'll come out with a new journal. So we're working on the new journal for this year, coming out for year 4, launches in September. The journal this year is called Walking with Angels. And it's going to have 52 stories of people who've been visited by angels, which is not usually the bright, white, shiny, with wings. It's usually a person. They're the most incredible stories of like somebody being in a car accident and no one around for miles. And this guy here who like pulls them out of a car and then he's gone. Like just so many really beautiful stories. So that's what we're working on. And year 4 launches September 18th. And God told me in January, you better tell anyone who will listen that there will be 100,000 people in year 4. So there's going to be 100,000 people from all over the world. So if anybody listening wants to jump in on that, I'll make sure I give you the website. Or if you want, I can give it now.
Yeah, give it now.
It's just fearintofaith.com. So if you go to fearintofaith.com, you'll be able to enroll. On June 11th, we're starting, and probably this is going to air after that, but we're doing a 100-day countdown to 100,000 people. So if you go to that website right now, you'll be able to see how many people have registered. And we just can't wait. Like, we know God's just going to show up, and it's going to be incredible. And this is what happens when you say a big yes to God. So all of these things, all of these successes, after that, I just started having people asking me to speak on their stages, speak on their podcasts. People that spoke at my event were like, now you got to speak at mine. That's kind of how it happened. And just a month ago, I got connected with a TV producer, long story short, in Dallas. And when she found out that we've been reading the Bible out loud, because that's one of the things we did, I got 6 readers, and they read every day at the same time. And we've been doing it for 3 years. And when she found that out, she cried. She said, you've been reading out loud on Facebook and YouTube for almost 3 years, the Bible? So as far as I know, no one's doing it as a TV show. You have to do this as a TV show. And so that's what we're working on this summer. Is September 18th. We'll also be launching as a TV show. It's going to stream live on Roku 3 times a day so that people all over the world can join in. And the vision that God gave me, and I got to tell you right now, the fear is nipping at my flesh right now to share this, but I have to tell you the vision that God gave me. Well, when she said about making a TV show wasn't my 6 readers, I saw the face of James Earl Jones. And I was like, wait a second, you want me to get him to read? And maybe you don't know, but there's actually a James Earl Jones app where he read the entire King James Bible. I used to put my kids to sleep to it. And I'm like, okay, I'll contact him. And then it was one face after another of celebrities. And that's what we're doing. We are literally going after every major faith influencer on the planet, from movie stars to TV to singers to athletes. I've been sending videos to people, like somebody's like, I know Justin Bieber, I know Selena Gomez, I know Dallas Jenkins, producer of The Chosen. So what I've been doing is I've just been sending them videos saying, this is what God's doing. And I don't know if your heart is for people to be in the Word of God, but if you want to be a part of 1 million people, because that's our goal, is 1 million people in a year and filling a stadium of people. If you want to be a part of 30,000 people coming to read the Word of God out loud, then I'd love for you to be one of our readers. Would you donate 2 hours of your time to read 4 chapters? So my vision for the TV show is when people tune in, they won't know who's going to be there next. They won't know if it's going to be Mel Gibson, or if it's going to be Dallas Jenkins, or if it's going to be this 107-year-old woman that somebody just connected me. She still can read. And now I'm like, where's the 3-year-old child prodigy that can read? Like, we're just going after all these great stories that will inspire people, and also every influencer on the planet. So I got to say to you, Michael, I don't know who you know, but if you want to connect me with anyone, my last podcast guy, he's like, I know billionaire so-and-so, and he's a huge believer. He'd love to hear about what you're doing. And that's what's happening, is people are just connecting with connecting me. So if anybody listening here, if you got a connection with somebody that's of influence, of power, who has money, but has a heart for Jesus and has a heart to see people in the Word, then definitely please connect with me. You can connect with me at fearintofaith.com or on my website, which is summerday.com. Important that you spell it right. It's DEY. Because, I got to be a little different with my name. So it's Summerday, DEY. And yes, that is in fact my real name. But if you know anybody that would be great for that, I'd love to be connected with them. I thought it would be 40 readers because it's going to be 40 days of filming. And then God's like, nope, I think it's going to be at least 100 people. And now, there's 313 episodes because we don't do Sundays. I'm like, Lord, is there going to be a different person every day? Do you have any idea how much work that is? You don't have any much help. My spirit is willing, but my flesh is weak, Lord. Like, that's huge. And then who am I to be like, Mel Gibson, come read the Bible. Like, who am I, Lord? And he goes, you're no one. That's why you're doing it. I'm like, why don't you use Mel Gibson? He's already done all this stuff. He has money. He has a film company. He has a crew. He knows everyone. Why are you doing this with me? And that's what God keeps saying, is because they don't know you. because I want to show the world somebody that nobody knows, getting people together to read the Bible because it
Mm,
needs to be about him. I
mm.
can't do this. This is like, who is Summer Day? Nobody knows me. Like, I can't do this. I'm just a girl who said yes to God. And I'm just a girl who did a Facebook Live to find 5 friends.
Well,
That's it.
well, I think you're more than that, and I kind of want to go there for a second with you. But first, just so you know, James Earl Jones does live in my in the Hudson Valley region in my area. So,
Stop it. I have not had anybody yet say that they can connect me.
I didn't say I could connect you. I just said I know where he lives.
You know where he lives. Well, you got to know somebody in that town who knows somebody in that town. It's the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You're just one person away.
100%, actually. I worked in the town that he lives in. I worked at a store there, and his groundskeepers used to come in all the time, and it was under his account. It was under a James Earl Jones account. Is what they would charge everything. So
I've already prayed to the Lord. I'm like, don't make a fool of your servant, right? Any video I send, like, it should be easy for the right people to just say, yeah, absolutely. Let me record that for you. That'd be amazing.
So I want to get into that a little bit in that you speak a lot about visions and a lot about God speaking to you. And I just, what I want to get into in terms of that is helping others tap into that. Because, whether you're religious or not, and obviously you are, right? But whether you're religious or not, you can tap into these visions and into this knowledge bank that's inside of you and this inner voice, right? And it's inspired by for you, God, for many, the universe, and for whatever they decide is God for them. But you have to be able to tap into it, right? So how do you, Summer, I'm asking you, how do you tap into this moment where you can see these visions, where you can hear God speaking to you? How do you find the space to do that?
So my journey with God has developed over many, many, many years. And probably one of the biggest, I always believed in God since I was little. Like, I can remember being 5 and just always feeling like Jesus is like my best friend. He's just this, right? Like, it never changed. Even, and I mentioned being Mormon earlier, and I got to tell you, one of my least favorite things is the judgment between Christians and Mormons. I need y'all to know I was raised Mormon, and I always loved Jesus, and I always knew God. I did. I always knew those things, and that's never changed for me. But what did change is parents getting divorced in high school, not going to church anymore, not having the best experience with boyfriends, going through a season where I almost didn't graduate high school, and I ran away from home for a little bit, and I was very suicidal. And I lost my way, and I didn't go to church for a while. And then I married a man. I feel like, they're like, when you choose your spouse, like, I married a man who, his dad died when he was 18, and his mom got a brain tumor 2 weeks before our wedding and passed away a year later. And he was like, I'm either atheist or I hate God, because there can't be a God who would do that. And so we were the holiday church people. Yes, Mom, I'll go to church with you on Christmas, So I went through a really long season where I wasn't really close to God. I never stopped believing in him, but I didn't read the Bible or pray or anything. And then, we had a daughter. That gets you really starting to think more about life. And eventually we started going back to church. And then we started going to Danny Johnson events. And, she does business conferences, but then she teaches you how everything that she just taught you is from the Bible, the greatest success book ever written. And her community is really strong believers. And we became friends with really strong believers. And it was a combination of those things that led my husband to the Lord. And Danny Johnson baptized my husband, which was incredible. And so the journey was stages. And then I got to go to Israel. You want to be close to God? Go to Israel. I feel like he's just 10 steps closer on the ladder when you go to Israel. So I went to Israel, and when I was there, I just felt like lost, still in my life. And I remember saying to Danny Johnson, I'm just here to find out what God wants from me. And before I finished my sentence, she goes, just you. It's her and I just talking one-on-one. She said, just you. He just wants you. He just wants all of you. And the next day I'm, praying at this 3,000-year-old structure of the Levites with my face down on a rock, crying to the Lord, like, what does that even mean? Just me. And he's like, I just want all of you. So I went to the Jordan River a couple days later, and I did a mikvah. In the Bible, that's when you immerse 7 times. People know the story of the man that had leprosy, and he's told to go immerse yourself in the Jordan River 7 times. And I really wanted to do that. So I did. I went in the Jordan River and I was like, I give you everything. And then I gave him my marriage. I gave him my children. Every time I went under, I just gave him more. And I gave him my womb. And at that time, people kept asking me if I was going to have another kid. And I kept saying, I don't know, ask God, because I gave him my womb. Even when I miscarried, I've had 3 miscarriages since Israel. I still was like, I gave God my womb. And it was this beautiful, amazing, comforting thing of like, I don't know, ask God. I don't know, ask God. And I wanted that for my whole life. I'm like, man, I want that for like my whole life. What would life be like if it's like, I don't know, ask God. Like, Jesus, take the wheel. So I started praying different. I started praying every day, like, Lord, I just give you this day, like everything in it. And I want to be used by you. And so people are like, man, God uses you so much. I'm like, but I ask him like every day. And I asked him every day for a long time before he showed up really big, because he'll test you at your word. Be like, are you serious? Some people want to be used by God, and then he presents opportunities and they don't. They want to be used by God and they're at the grocery store and they're like, oh, I should pray for that person and who has crutches. And they're like, no, they'll think I'm weird. So they don't. See, I say yes to God. And so he shows up more. He's like, oh, she's going to say, yes, let's go. Let's go. He just keeps throwing stuff at me. But I would pray. I would pray to be used by God. And one of the things I felt like he told me was to go pray for my people. I'm like, okay, but how do I do that? It's like Facebook. Okay. So I started doing this thing called a prayer blitz. I would go in Facebook groups where people are putting prayer requests for like, my dad has cancer, my kid this. And I would just hit their name. I would go into Facebook Messenger. I'd hit record and I'd say, you don't know me, but I saw your request about your dad's cancer. I just want to pray for you really quick. And I would just pray for them right then and there. And I did it every morning. I'd set a 15-minute timer and I'd give 15 minutes to God just to go be used by him. And I usually would pray for anywhere from like 5 to 7 people. And I did that every day for like way more than a year consistently. I just kept praying for people. And I didn't realize that I had prayed like for well over 1,000 people. And it was usually people I didn't know. And a lot of times they wouldn't get it. They wouldn't reply. Or sometimes they would reply months later. They're like, I just got this, but I swear to you, this prayer was more relevant now than when you prayed. I feel like it was God's timing on your prayer. And so I say all that because I think all of it is part of why this Bible thing happened. A lot of the women that are reading the Bible with me, I prayed for them. I didn't realize that then they would start following me on Facebook. I didn't realize then they would friend request me. That was never my intention. The other thing that happened that I didn't share is right before COVID hit, I felt like God said, go Facebook Live for 91 days, read Psalms 91 and pray. So this was March of 2020. And I had never prayed on Facebook Live and I didn't talk about my faith on Facebook. Not very much at all. And that was one of those, nope, I'm not going to do it. And he's like, do it. I'm like, you're not going to do it. Do it. And I'll tell you, when I know that I'm hearing from God is because when I say no, I feel like my body gets shaky or it burns with fire. I feel something in my stomach. I feel something in my chest. It almost feels like you ever been like hit with a soccer ball and you're like, oh, you lose your breath, right? I feel that for a second. I feel like you're going to say no to me. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Like, I just feel this weird tension in my body when I know that God is telling me to do something and I'm not. And I've learned to just be more in tune with that as it happens. It still happens, you guys. I still have moments where I was like, no, Lord, I'm not going to do it. And he's like, yes, you are. I would have probably felt that way had I not told you about James Earl Jones, because I started to feel that way. And I'm like, okay, right. I'll tell him.
You did say that. Yeah, you mentioned that you were feeling weird not saying what was coming to mind.
I was like, yeah, I have to share. So I'd already done that. So I went Facebook Live. I chose to walk in obedience. And I did read Psalms 91 and I prayed. 8 days later, COVID lock-in hit. And I told everybody, I don't know why God told me to do this. I'm just doing it. And on day 8, I was like, okay, well, we now know why God told me to do this. And I kept going. And around day like 89, the riots hit. And I told everybody, I said, I guess I'm not going to be done on 91 days because we got to keep praying every day. So I ended up going 108 days in a row. And then about 2 weeks later was, hey, do you want to read the Bible? And I didn't realize at the time till later. God's like, what do you think I was doing during those 108 days? You showed everyone that you're serious. They know if you say I'm going to read the Bible cover to cover, you're going to do it. Like, he was planting the field for the harvest that I didn't know was coming. And so I tell people, if you want to hear from God more, first of all, 2 things. Ask him. He tells you to ask. Say, I want to hear from you more. I want to be used by you more. I want to be your voice. I still pray almost every day. Father God, I want to be used to help your people. I want to be your voice to your people. I want to be your hands and your feet. Show me how I can show up and serve today. I pray and I ask that almost every day.
Hmm.
And so ask him. The second thing is, I don't feel like saying this gentle. Shut up and listen. Like people are like, I want to hear from the Lord and I don't hear from him. I'm like, well, how often do you just sit and listen for his voice? Sit in silence, get out of your house, go in nature where you're not distracted by your children. I try every morning as well to have like moments of silence where I'm like, Lord, I am awake. What do you want to do today? And I sit, listen, and then I'll journal. I'll journal what I feel like I'm hearing from him. So those are the two things: is pray and ask him for it, and then be quiet and listen to him. Listen to him.
I love that. And it's, it goes back to when you were talking about the greatest success story ever written, the greatest success journal ever written, in that, we hear all of these different ways of being successful, which are to meditate. And I practice these forms, which is to meditate, which is to listen, which is to ask ourselves powerful questions, which is to journal. And then when we look at what you're talking about, it's all the same in a way, right? Except your focus is listening to God and speaking to God. And I love that, and I love how you decided to own it. And I think that speaks to clarity of when we're clear on our mission, when we're clear on what we're set out to do, then people will come and people will be a part of our community and will follow us, and we can lead better because, like, as you said, like as soon as you started owning it, as soon as you started sharing and sharing your visions and sharing your passion for God, then everything started happening for you. And I really love that once you stepped into that power and started having that clarity and sharing that clarity with everyone, it was like things started unraveling and unfolding for you in a way that you couldn't explain. I really, really just admire you for that vulnerability and being able to share that with us, but also at that time, like you were vulnerable. You put yourself out there at that time. And I want to just bring that back to when we're talking about public speaking, when we're talking about feeling judgment and all of that, is that you said it earlier. It's like no matter where we are in our journey, no matter where we are in our career, in our speaking lives and all this other stuff, we're going to feel vulnerable. We're going to feel nerves. We're going to feel judgment and everything. And it's because we're making ourselves vulnerable. And that's when we know we're on the right path, right? Like speak to that, right? When you're making yourself vulnerable, you're like, oh, yep.
100%. We said that earlier. Like, think about all the great things you ever accomplished. Like, you'll know. And I feel like there's one more story we have to share, right?
Sure.
Because I love RV because you can see me, but
not
everybody
yes, that's
else.
Right.
That's like another crazy part of the story. Is another reason that I am so successful. 6-figure coach. We're hitting 7 figures this year. Like it's just absolutely unreal. Is not only do I say yes to God, not only do I have the courage to just walk in bold, crazy, big dreams, because I struggled for a while. Like, who am I to say I'm going to lead 1 million people to read the Bible cover to cover in a year? Like, who does that? I do. That's who does that. And when I make decisions, not only am I careful how I talk about it, right? I didn't say to you, I hope one day what I'd really like to do. I'm like, no, this is what we're doing. Would you like to be a part of it? I talk about it with confidence and I don't detour. And that's part of the RV story. So I never set out to full-time live in an RV. Our goal was like, we had friends who they traveled like 3 to 6 months in an RV, and you could take your kids to the East Coast and really give them like a really good US history education. And I'm born and raised in LA, right? So that's my vision originally, was like, we're just gonna homeschool for a season and it's gonna be beautiful. May of 2019, so how many months before my company was stolen? Just a few months before my company was stolen, God gave me a vision when I was praying at church. And it was almost like he was like, you're so cute, Summer. Like, I love that you want to homeschool, but no, that's not what I'm doing here. And he gave me a vision of my daughter. She was like 5 or 6 years old, laying hands on someone and praying for them on the side of the road at like a chicken shack in Alabama with people lined up to be next. And he said, I'm sending you into ministry. Your entire family is going to lead people to the Lord. And it's not 3 months and it's not 6 months. I want you to sell everything, pick up your mat and walk. No time frame and no roots. And I'm like, what? He also said that the RV would be provided. What? Because we didn't have money for an RV back then. Like, okay, Lord. So it took me several days to like get the courage to even tell my husband all of this. And God had already prepared his heart. He's like, all right, let's do it then. And then 2 days later, a guest speaker at church confirmed everything. God had told her that day that there was a family that was going to full-time RV. And she ended up praying over us, and she confirmed everything that I had had a vision on. And she didn't know us, and she was from San Diego. It was crazy. So we started to move forward into that. And I think it was January 1st. We did a big, like, January 1st, 2020 announcement to everybody, like, hey, we're selling everything. We're going into full-time ministry. This is what God told us to do. So talk about saying a big, huge yes to the Lord. Like, that's why I tell people, I was just a girl who said yes. Like, I said yes, and I sold everything. Even my amazing Star Wars collection that I still miss. I sold everything. I sold trinkets that I had attachment to for 40 years. And we did. He said, sell everything and have no roots and time frame. And then COVID hits. And everybody's like, are you still going? Like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to have garage sales on Facebook. I literally would lay out a table. I do a Facebook Live and say, I can't have a garage sale. Will you buy any of this? Like, who will buy this stuff? And people were so kind, left and right. They were buying things. And eventually, like, we could open up enough to have a little bit of a garage sale and everything. But even when COVID hit and the world was crazy, I was like, God hasn't told me not to go. So we're going to go, and we don't know what the world will be like. And we don't even know where we're going. I literally told people we might August 1st just get in the car and pray and go, do we go left or right? He has not told me. But if you're doing the math, he told me in May of 2019 that I would go into full-time ministry. Didn't know what that meant. I was running a theater company. All of that gets taken away. Then I'm like, I guess I'll be a speaker. What happens? 6 free events. Then COVID hits. And instead of trying to save a dying theater company, I'm launching my coaching program. I'm launching my speaking business. I do 108 days of Facebook Live. Then I ask people if they want to read the Bible. And 6,700 women were in a Facebook group. On July 13th, we started, just almost 2 weeks before I was supposed to go into full-time ministry. So for 14 months, I said yes to God, sold everything, and had zero idea what I was going to do. Sold everything to go into ministry and had no ministry, had no path. I didn't know if I would just go be a preacher. No idea. But that is what happens when you say a big fat yes to God and you continue to not back down, no matter what anyone throws at you, even if it's COVID, you just don't back down. This is what I'm going to be committed to. And you move forward through all the crazy obstacles. God shows up and it's crazy. I didn't think there would be 6,700 women.
All right.
I didn't think that we'll start year 4 with 100,000 people. Like, we're looking at booking for 2024. We're like, we're going to have to book at least a 5,000 person venue. Like, so we'll go from 300 our first event to like 5,000 in just 3 years. I mean, I think that's what it's looking like. It's going to happen.
That is incredible.
It's all the pieces. My life is not just one piece. It's one big crazy yes after another, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, saying yes to opportunities. I love that. I know that you have a tight schedule to keep to. I can keep you on for the rest of the day because this is I'm having fun with you, that's for sure. But I know your husband is like, we got to get her off soon. So what I do want to ask you is something a little bit off topic, but on topic to some extent, in that I like to kind of conclude with something a little bit more personal to you. And I was thinking about maybe some hobbies that you do, some fun activities and everything, but I'm actually even more interested in maybe your craziest RV story that you have to date. If you have one, if not, we can just get to know you different.
We've had a lot of crazy RV stories. We've blown tires on the freeway, like in the fast lane. We blew a tire and on the side of the road, having to change that at 10:30 at night was a little scary. We've just had a lot of breakdowns. We broke down in Pennsylvania and then got everything fixed and had to hightail it to Texas for an event, then had to hightail it to California for an event. And thank God something else needed to be fixed. So we took it in and the guy was like, I can't believe you made it here alive because this axle wasn't fixed correctly. and it was bent. And so we had so many different, just kind of close calls, you might say. Living in an RV is not as glamorous as y'all think it is. Like sometimes, like we just had to replace our microwave. Like I shut the door and the microwave just stopped. I'm like, oh, okay. Like there's just little things that happen. You know, we have a kitchen floor over here. We have to have a mat because it got all ripped up because we didn't see that one little thing that fell, and then we closed it in and it just ripped up the whole floor. We haven't replaced it yet. So it's not always glamorous, you know, sharing one bathroom with my husband and 3 girls. One of them is a teenager, is, you know, not always as glamorous. And I mean, I'm so glad that we've done it. We've just met the most incredible people. We've seen so many incredible places. The Ark in Kentucky is just beautiful. We've got to see how different all the states are, not just in how they look, but the culture, the people. We've been to so many different churches. I think that might be why I have a passion to unite people outside of the church. There's a lot of people who've been hurt and broken by the church. And what I've realized is like, no, you weren't hurt by the church. You were hurt by that church and that group of people, because that same like church has a branch in a different state and it's not even the same. The church is not the same everywhere you go. It's very, very different. So that's my heart, to just get people in the word. It's like, you don't need to rely on this guy at this pulpit who's just a flawed sinner, right, to tell you his interpretation. Why don't you just read it for yourself? It is the greatest book ever written. It's the #1 best-selling book. Why wouldn't you read it? Like most people, if it's the #1 movie of the year, they go and see it, right? It's the #1, you better go see it. The #1 movie of all time, go see it. The #1 song. It's like, this is the #1 book that's ever been published. Why wouldn't you at least read it for yourself and see what you think about it and see how God would talk to you, instead of rely on a person behind a pulpit that's just as different as the person down the street? So that's another one of my passions, is I've just seen the brokenness of the church. I've seen the people hurt by the church. That doesn't mean that the church doesn't do good work. And that doesn't mean there's not, I've seen amazing pastors and I've seen amazing congregations, and I've met people, we didn't want to leave Pennsylvania. The church there is so incredible. I felt like I was family when I walked in. I didn't want to leave. So there's amazing places and then there's broken places, and you might just be in a church that's broken, but if you just moved over here, you'd see the most incredible people. And that's why my passion is like, just let's get you in the word. Let's just start there and see what God has for you. So a lot of crazy RV stories, been to a lot of places, and hobbies. I feel like recently in my life, I don't have as much time.
It's hard.
For hobbies. I love board games. Like I like playing. I'm very competitive. I'm also really good at things like board games. You know, my siblings and my children, sometimes they're like, I don't want to play with you. You always win. And I always tell my kids, the one thing you can count on for me is I'm not ever going to let you win. I love you so much that I want you to have to work and learn and strive and get the skills to beat your mom. Because that's how my dad was like with chess. My dad didn't let me win. And I remember he probably did let me win when I finally did win. But I remember it was like a really big deal the first time I beat my dad at chess. I'm like, that's what I want for you guys. I'm not just, you're 6, you're going to learn what it's like not to win. Yeah. And so, you know, I love board games. When I get time, I love watching good movies. I'm a Star Wars freak. I mentioned Star Wars earlier. I'm just like a giant, huge Star Wars fan. You have a favorite quote from the movies? Star Wars? I mean, come on. Yoda says, do or do not, there's no try. I mean, I feel like that's how I live my life. People are like, well, I'm going to try to. I'm like, really? You're going to try or you're going to do? Like, just go do things, you guys. Like, make decisions and go do them. Yeah. I feel like there's profound wisdom. And there is. That's why I asked about favorite quote, because there's just so much like with Yoda, and I love that, the do or do not, there is no try. And you said it earlier too, of like, you don't say, I hope I can go and speak, and I hope and one day I'm going to try. It's like, no, I'm going to speak, and I'm going to invite this many people, and they're going to show up. You know, speaking with that firmness is so important. And I think it's something that you've showed throughout this time that we've spoken with each other, is that you have
have always looked at, first of all, I think you look at things through a different lens than most do, in that you see it through an optimistic lens of like, there's a path for me and I'm taking that path and it's going to work out. It may not work out the way that I might have envisioned it right away, but it will work out and it's going to serve someone. It's going to serve me. It's going to serve someone, and it's going to be for the better of everyone. And then there's this, like I said, this confidence in the way that you speak, and this matter of factness of like, it's not even like there's a question there. It's just, this is what I'm doing. And I really love that. And I know that our listeners, this is going to resonate with them. And I'm speaking for them, but I mean, you're listening, right? So if you've stayed on with us this long, it's obviously resonated with you, and it's so inspiring to speak with someone like you who, like you said, your journey of like building such a strong business, this theater business, having that taken from you, and then not even staying in that regret or in that failure, which I was going to ask about earlier, but we just didn't have enough time for. But like, you didn't even stay there long. Like, I mean, yeah, sure, it felt long in the moment and what you shared a little bit, but you didn't stay there long, and you were just like, boom, let's start something new. And I just love that. That's so inspiring, because so many people deal with failure and just don't know how to move on, right?
Yeah, I'll give you just one quick thing that I do teach. For those of you who've been through failure or been through that stuff, if you're in that season, we talked about, I gave you the whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right, and then I gave you the summer day version. Whether you speak you can or speak you can't, you're right. So if you're in that season, you've been knocked down, you're like, how did you get back up? Two things that I had to do is, one, I had to stop talking about it, because you get what you speak. You will get more of what you speak about. Somebody just reminded me that they're like, I remember you saying 3 years ago that you would get Les Brown to speak on your stage. I'm like, I did? I forgot that. Oh my gosh, right? So you have to stop speaking about the depression, the breakup, the divorce, the company stolen. I was stuck in that place because I kept talking about it. I kept crying about it. Yes, you have to have a season of grief with loss. And then you have to make a decision. Are you past that stage? And you have to stop talking about it if you don't want to keep being about it. And then the second thing was, I had to speak back my belief in myself. I really did lose all belief in myself. I lost all identity, and I had to start speaking it. Because here's the deal. You have to speak it until you believe it, and then your belief will catch up to you. Like, I had to speak it even though I was like, I don't know, but I just spoke it. I'm like, then I'm going to be a speaker. Then I'm going to be a coach. Then I'm going to be a trainer. Then I'm going to use my voice to change the world. I had to speak it until my belief caught up. So that's it. Stop speaking about the things you don't want and speak about the things you want. And if you want a scripture, it's Romans 4:17, is you call the things that are not into being the things that are. Like, that's my summer version of that scripture. And there's also death and life is in the power of the tongue, Proverbs 18:21. I think that's the most powerful scripture in the entire Bible. It tells you are either speaking death or life. And I was speaking a lot of death, and I was speaking a lot of depression. And then I had to realize I wanted to speak life into what was possible. I wanted to speak life into my dreams and my visions. And the other thing I did, I started binge listening to Les Brown. You don't have belief, borrow it from other people.
Yeah.
Like, borrow it from me, borrow it from Michael, borrow it from other people. Listen to podcasts, listen to YouTube, listen to great people who speak motivation and speak inspiration. You listen to Les Brown every day for 60 days. I don't know how you're not going to have your life changed. Like, that's not what else I did. I was like, okay, I don't want this. I'm going to start speaking this way, and I'm going to get somebody else's belief sewn into me until I have it myself.
Yeah, and I like that, sewn into me. And it's so true, because so many great personal development coaches and professional development coaches speak about you're only as good as your circle of friends or people around you. And so many of the time, we don't know how to level up that group, that friend group, that relationship group. And a very simple way that you just brought up is you don't have to change those friends. I mean, like, look, if there are friends that you have that aren't serving you, that are judging you or mistreating you in a way that's not serving you, then you might need to start walking in a different path, a different direction. I'm not telling you what to do with your life, but start hanging around people that serve you. But what I'm getting at here is, I listen every single day to different motivational coaches, professional coaches, inspirational coaches. I listen to them every single day. And it's because I think about it as like, this is my circle of influence, is that like, I don't know Brendan Burchard. I don't know Tony. I don't know you. I don't know all these people, but I'm going to listen to what they have to say because that's just going to change the way that I think. And I'm going to give you the contrast to that of what helps me is that if I listen to things that are negative, if I watch negative movies with a ton of violence, if I listen to music that is, very negative and has a lot of negative talk in it, well, guess how I'm going to start conducting my life? Very similar to that. So if that's one way of living a life, and which is what we see as a majority, by the way, then we could change that. Then we could change that into, what we're talking about here, which is that positive speak, right? So it's changing it.
So good. I have a whole teaching that you pretty much just summed it up. I call it the movie in your mind and how it's programmed by what you think, what you see, and what you hear. And I love it because I talk to clients all the time. What are you watching on TV? What music are you listening to? I had to realize that like Alanis Morissette and Pink, they weren't really doing a good job of programming me into possibility. It's like negative and hate the men. Like, I was like, as much as I love that stuff, I need to not listen to it all the time. So I love it. Share that.
Yeah, and not all the time. Yeah, because Alanis Morissette has some great songs from the 90s that we want to throw back, right? But you don't listen to that alt rock all day long, right? Put a little inspirational stuff in your life. Summer, this has been amazing, and I would love to have you back on. I think our audience could certainly benefit from having you back on and hearing your inspirational stories and everything. But I do know that you have a fantastic Facebook group. You have a giveaway on your website. You have some really amazing events coming up. So of course, that'll be in our show notes. But if you could just share it for our audio listeners here, where they could find you, how they can get in touch with you, and what you have coming up.
Sure. I would love to. I've got a lot of stuff going on. My website is probably the best place, summerday.com, and that's DEY. So it's summer, SUMMERDEY.com, summerday.com. And I'm on there. I do have a free ebook I wrote. It's called Fire Your Fear. Because everybody knows me as the fear crusher. Like people are like, what's the number one thing you do for your clients? I was like, crush fear. Crush fear out of them, whether it's relationships or so they can take a giant stage, whatever it is. Like if fear's ripping you, this is the book for you. You get to fire fear, and it's going to give you 5 techniques on how to do that. And then, September 14th through the 16th in Dallas, Texas, we have our next Fear into Faith live. And it's now a 3-day event because 2 days was not enough. And there'll be about 12 plus speakers, including Les Brown, which is amazing. Oh my gosh, still can't believe that that's real. And it's also virtual. So if you can't get there, there's a virtual ticket that you can get. We would love, 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 love to have you there. I'm telling you, this is like no conference you've ever been to. If I'm just being honest, most of the faith conferences I've been to can get a little boring and a little repetitive. And then you have amazing business conferences like Funnel Hackers Live, and I love Pedro Deo's 100X events. They are so thrilling and exciting. And so what we've done is we've merged what the business industry is killing and how they're doing it amazing with the faith stuff, so that you're going to come, you're going to get filled with the Holy Spirit fire. It's going to be amazing. People are going to get set free and delivered. There's a lot of tears, but there's a lot of laughter. I mean, we have fun and we've got exciting music. And I bring in my theater background. So I have some like dance performances and some flag dancers, and we had a ballerina, and then we have some skits that we've uniquely crafted for the event to like anchor in the experience. And then the business conferences, they're always giving you worksheets, and they give you activation and things you get to like do right then and there. And so we've brought that into the faith-based environment as well. And I will say that probably 80% of the people who come aren't actually in the Bible study. So if you're like, oh, but I didn't read the Bible with you. Well, most of the people who come, they didn't read the Bible with us. So if that's your jam at all, we'd love to have you September 14th through the 16th. And then we're launching year 4 of reading the Bible cover to cover in a year. If you've been waiting, we have so many people, like there's this lady, Karen, and she said for 59 years, she's tried to read the Bible cover to cover. She's finishing year 3 with us. Like, it's incredible. I have woman after woman, and now there's men too. They're like, I always wanted to do this and I've never finished. And we have all the tools now. We have email, we have text to remind you, we have an app, we have a community where you can be in the group and interact with people. We're gamifying it this year. Like with the app, I'm like, we're going to give away prizes and stuff. Like whatever I have to do to motivate people to like just finish, like I'm going to do it. That's one of my prayers. Like, Lord, what else do I got to throw at them? And then also, we talked a little bit about my speaking program. I have events, virtual events, and sometimes live called Master the Stage. So if you go to masterthestage.com, you could probably find out what we have next in that arena. And if you want more info about my public speaking course or anything like that, that's also at summerday.com. So, and I live on Facebook. If you search Summer Day, Summer DEY, I'm usually the first one that pops up, and that's kind of the best place if you want to follow me. I have Instagram too, but I just prefer the engagement side of Facebook. So that's where I tell people how I live. Cool. I think that's about all we have, coming up. And I'm reminding you, if you've listened this long, and anybody who'd be a great reader for our Bible TV show that we're launching, we're just taking all that in right now as well. Awesome. Hang on for the ride.
Awesome. Well, I'll volunteer myself. I think I'd like a shot at that.
I think you have a good speaking voice, and I think you would qualify. That's the one thing, is we kind of have to have people send in videos, right? Because not everybody's really at the level, maybe. So we're not just taking everyone. But you've proven yourself, Michael. I'd love to have you. That would be great.
Thank you. That'd be awesome. It'd be a great experience. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been really amazing having you as a guest. It's always fun having a conversation like this. And I think it's just always great to have a guest who can share stories of their vulnerability and show how they were able to make it to the other side. And you really shared a lot of that with us. So I want to thank you so much for doing that with us today. This has been awesome.
It was great to hang out with you. I felt like I was just hanging out with my big brother.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Thank you for listening to The Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast. Thank you again to our sponsor, Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. That's DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. This episode was produced by Uncle Mike at the iHeart Studios in Poughkeepsie. Special thanks to Lara Rodrian for the opportunity and my team at Michael Esposito Inc.